Okay, I think we're good. Is everyone comatose from lunch now? Can I ask a question? Everyone awake? Good afternoon, everybody. That's pretty weak. That's a pretty weak opening. I need some energy up here. This is actually my first big summit talk, so let's hear it. Good afternoon, everybody. Woo! That's much better. So we're going to be talking about backgrounding with Shiny. If you're not familiar with what Shiny is, it's an open source project that I'm working on, and it's still in beta, so hopefully the demo gods are good to me today. Anyhow, my name is Alan Ritchie. I am a former Microsoft and Xamarin MVP. I've written a bunch of open source. You may or may not have used it. User dialogues, geofencing, that sort of stuff. I've been at .NET for, close to 18 years now. You know, it's a love-hate relationship, as with everything in .NET. And I've done lots of Azure. I'm doing lots of Azure these days. We all have to say it, right? But at least I saved it for last. We won't be talking about Azure in this thing, so don't worry. So we're going to talk about the challenges with backgrounding and device access. I'll tell you exactly what Shiny is and what the goals of the project are going to be. And I will show you some code in this. This isn't all PowerPoint, so don't worry. That's why I said hopefully Visual Studio is good to me today. I've gone through the test like 3 or 4 times, and it worked, but you never know. So who is doing backgrounding in here? Anybody doing backgrounding, geofencing, GPS, Bluetooth? One Bluetooth? Yeah? As you probably know, one does not simply background on mobile. It is quite a task, especially mostly on Android, I would say. You know, the challenges with Android is you never know what to use, and we'll cover that in a few minutes. Really, the problems with backgrounding is each platform does it a lot differently, a lot differently. iOS, in my opinion, got it pretty good. UWP is close. Anybody using UWP for backgrounding? Just curious. I saw some kind of doing this. You're lying. You are not. UWP, come on. You know, if you are doing backgrounding, you get a very small window to do stuff in, and because the OS is out to kill you. So if you're taking too long, you know, that background task just isn't going to happen. You know, if a lot of people are using plugins in here. Anybody using plugins for their backgrounding work? Nobody wants to put their hand up for that one. Custom stuff? No way. You're still lying to me, Michael. It's all right. The problem with plugins is that they're really not, most of them out there aren't really good at backgrounding, mine included. If you are using my geofencing, there is little hacks you got to work with. Notifications, same thing. You really got to kind of work with it to get around, especially, again, Android kicking you in the face on that one every time. And the other things that as .NET developers, we want to do a lot of async things, right? We want to await things. I mean, everything's got to be async these days. And background tasks aren't really good at doing that. They don't know how to wait, right? And what's the one thing they tell you never do with a task? Never call .wait, right? Unless you like deadlocks, but you know, whatever it may be. So iOS, like I said, I feel like they got this right. They do delegates, you know, they serialize down to memory, they serialize everything down when your app goes to sleep, and then they bring it all back up, and you don't really have to worry about your pointers too much. You have to do your stuff quick, though. Roughly on GPS, it's about 4 seconds. You don't get your task done, so if you're calling some remote API that times out, 4 seconds, you know, iOS will start killing you. There are ways to get around it. You can request background time, and it'll give you about 30 seconds to work with, give or take, but nothing more. And if you start abusing that and it continuously shuts you down, yeah. They've started tuning it down because people get really abusive with it and just keep pinging the radio and stuff. So on average, you'll see it about 30 seconds. You can continuously request it and hope for the best, but they start to throttle you. So if you abuse that process, then they'll abuse you back. iOS is really good at that. Android, you know, you have to spin everything back up itself. So if you do any sort of geofencing, You reboot your device, the geofences all disappear. It doesn't actually persist that data, which, that kind of sucks. So you register to receive boot notifications, and then you have to re-register all the notification and geofencing that you were doing. Bluetooth as well. It just kind of drops it all. The data just disappears. So you end up having to write your own persistence engines. Again, why plugins don't generally work here is because we either have to take a dependency on SQLite or Essentials to write this stuff like to a file so that we can work with it later. So that kind of sucks. Services are broadcast receivers. I don't know. Sometimes a little bit of column A, sometimes a little bit of column B. It just, you never know what's going to happen with Android, and they do tend to change. It's confusing, so we just kind of keep working through it. UWP, they actually, surprisingly, I'm going to say UWP really got their implementation right. It's a little bit screwball for anybody that's worked with WinRT. I know there was only 2 of you that raised your hand. Nobody actually wants to admit to it. But they actually did a really good job with how they do triggers and how they do periodic tasks. Now, their periodic tasks only run a max or a minimum of 15 minutes. So you can only call for them every 15 minutes, which is unfortunate. But it is Windows, right? So you're probably not doing a ton of backgrounding stuff. I mean, I don't know too many people that are carrying around their PCs going, hey, geofences, vibrate when I'm near one, right? So going back, this is basically what we see in the ecosystem. So on iOS, our delegates, Android, our confusion, and UWP triggers and background tasks. They got it right. But in the Xamarin world, the things that I tend to see are people using timers. If you're using timers, you're probably not going to have a good experience because as soon as that app goes to the background, your timer, in thin air, it's gone, right? It's not going to work. And surprisingly, I see this more often than not, which is strange. People are like, well, it doesn't work. Well, of course it doesn't. Memory's gone, right? So it's not going to fire. They also want to use events. So we want to register events in our view models to say, okay, well, when this thing wakes up, I want to know about it in my view model. The problem is again, when it goes to the background, all the memory from your view model will disappear. Your delegate will be spun back up, but your view model's long gone. So it's executing against nothing. You probably get a null reference exception. I mean, sky's the limit there. There's nothing to fire against. And like I said, timers, same thing, same problem. It's pretty much useless. Thus, Shiny to the rescue. So again, this is a new beta open source library I am working with. I'm working a lot with Dan from Prism. There's a whole bunch of other contributors working towards getting this to be a pretty cool tech. And I think it's different than anything else that we've got in the open source community right now because it's not centralized towards your UI at all. This is all centralized towards dealing with the background jobs in a centralized fashion. And in order to do that, again, we said plugins aren't great because, plugins really focus on their singular tasks, right? They don't have the infrastructure that allow them to really get going again. So like I said, geofences, when Android reboots, all your geofences are gone. That's not a good developer experience. And so many people have hit me with that in OSS saying, well, it doesn't work on reboot. Sorry, it happens. These are the things because we don't have those storage engines. So Shiny has that. Out of the gate, it has its built-in file structure, data stores, etc., so that when the device does reboot, we can respin up all of your data. It has centralized eventing. So I did go with the iOS model with delegates. So when you register your delegate, it will rehydrate that delegate and run just like normal. A delegate isn't something you want to put in your view models. Again, it will still disappear. Your view model will, but the delegate will be good. And it has dependency injection out of the box. Now, I know a lot of Xamarin people are sort of, shall we say, anti-DI, which is very unfortunate, because it does lead to good testability. It leads to good decoupled components. And really, when you're working with background processes, it's not about bringing the background process to your code. It's about bringing your code to the infrastructure or the delegate. And you really have to work reverse like that because it's not really a UI-centric thing. This is more like, okay, well, the user did hit a geofence, I want to send a notification, say, hello, do you want to buy my stuff? Right? Or I walked into a beacon. You guys have been walking into beacons all week. Probably didn't know that yet, but I'll be quiet about that. Shiny also has built-in logging. Pretty much every framework that's out there right now has to have some sort of built-in logging because we don't want to take a dependency on some other framework. Now, Shiny's interesting because I chose not to bring in Microsoft's extensions logging because it's quite a big beast to bring in. With it comes serialization libraries and pretty much like 12 or 13 packages just for their logging engine, which is a little bit unfortunate. It's just not ready for mobile, in my opinion. Shiny is built with RX in mind. So anybody that's not comfortable with RX, you will see it occasionally, mostly in the Bluetooth stuff because Bluetooth is really ideal for RX. But there are some small areas where RX still appears in the rest of the core frameworks, which we'll talk about. I'll cover a little bit. So a lot of people have asked, okay, well, what's the difference between Shiny and Xamarin Essentials? To be fair, I've had a lot of these things for years. James and I think, really started doing plugins roughly around when Stuart Lodge was still doing MVVM Cross and really bringing the plugin nature. I got a pose for you? There we go. I'm now blind, so I can't see anybody. So if you've got a question, you're going to have to wait a few minutes. So Essentials has all these things out of the box. You know, your environment, your app info, your device info, connectivity. They don't have periodic background jobs, though. File system helpers, settings, caching, you know, the works. I ported a lot of my stuff over. I still need a lot of this stuff in order for the framework to function. So it is a little repetitive, but it helps me work at the speed that I want to work at and not necessarily the speed at the Essentials team. So that stuff's all there out of the box with DI. But Shiny looks to go beyond that. So the key modules that I focused on to start is stuff like Bluetooth. That's both central and peripheral modes, so your GAT servers and your connection. That's actually in my workshop. Anybody going to the workshop for BLE? Okay. And beacons. Beacons is another one. Anybody using iBeacons out there? It's kind of dipped a little bit. One? Yeah, we talked. You're using Eddystone. It's not the same thing. You're the first to say you ever used Eddystone, but nobody else using beacons? Fantastic marketing tool. If you really want to get at your customers, that's a good way to spam them. And GPS, I know this is out there in Essentials as well, but Essentials actually isn't aiming at the background. I'm not even sure if they've added an event to get the polling of the GPS. Does anybody know? I don't think 1.3 has it either. And that's because of the challenge with backgrounding. They can't really deal with it yet. It's hard. It's a hard problem to have. And geofencing, again, I've talked about that enough, so we'll leave that out for now. HTTP transfers. Anybody doing big downloads in their app? Big downloads being 20 megs? Anybody 20 megs? 10, 20 megs a pop? 300, somebody said? Okay. Okay, and you're doing that in the background? You got a backgrounding library? Okay. It's pretty tough to do, especially on Android. Android is, again, the pain that is. It does have the mechanisms built in, but they're not very visible. They actually really don't talk about it. I'm wondering if they're going to deprecate it someday. But you know, it is there. And the other thing about HTTP transfers, does anybody track their progress, or do they just let it spin forever? So you are giving them a queue of speed? So okay, great. Because most people don't, and they just let it go there forever, and you're like, when's this going to finish? This year? Maybe next? And again, if it does go to the background, you can let it spin in the background, right? But if you do just HTTP client, and you start to download it, just like everything else, when that app goes to the background, it will flush it away. So, and last but not least, sensors. There's not really a lot there. I just brought it over because I had it for a while, and Essentials had it, so I figured why not. So, let's do some code, because I want to show how easy it is, minus the infrastructure, or minus the bootstrapping. So I have this little project that I start. Can everybody see that? Is that big enough? Let me see. Come on. Whoa, not that big. Come on. Oh, I can't even see that. Good? Good? Good. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put some dependencies in this. I can't make the tree bigger though, so you'll just have to assume I'm doing something right. And we're going to take the pre-release. So I'm going to bring in Shiny Core. This is our essentials. Basically, it's the periodic jobs, it's the environment variables, it's all that good stuff. Most of it's there. We'll come back to this in a second. I'm going to take notifications as well because this is great for demos. And we'll also come back to you. And last but not least, we'll do a geofence. Why not? So Shiny is very much similar in your spin up to ASP.NET. Anybody doing ASP.NET Core? That's it, not the whole room. Is there people still doing .NET Framework? Come on, nobody wants to put their hand up for that. That's fine. So Shiny registers very similar to the way ASP.NET Core does. So it's a very familiar, hopefully a very familiar environment. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say I want to use notifications. Okay, so we'll bring that in. Everything's based off extension methods, so you don't need to know, am I registering this as a singleton? Am I registering this as a transient? It doesn't matter. The framework will take care of that for you. Now, one thing I consistently see people trip on is permissions. Constantly I get pegged about permissions because do we have permissions to use Bluetooth? What permissions do I need to use Bluetooth? What permissions do I need to use geofencing? When do I ask for it? Right? When do I ask for permissions to do that thing? Well, with Shiny, what I did, especially with Android, because if you ask for permissions before the activity's ready, your app dies, right? You get a crash. So one of the things we set out to do was it didn't matter. I mean, has anybody used user dialogues? Anybody? I'm sorry. You know, I think I fought that battle for so long going, you know, you really need to be in a view. You can't just do it in your constructor. You got to sit there and wait for the view to be ready if you want something to be displayed. Who knew? iOS is fairly good at dealing with it, but Android, again, sucks because it's all based off the top activity. I mean, if you're using MVVM cross, xamarin.forms really hides it from you, but if you're using any of those frameworks, they're all based on using some sort of top activity. So I have that same problem, but I didn't want to say, you know, you can't ask for your permissions here, you can't ask for your permissions here. At some point in your view model there, you can ask for it there. So I didn't want to deal with that crap anymore. Enough of that. So with notifications, you really only need to ask for permissions on iOS, but there's a lot of overloads in the system. I know it's pretty hard to see. Why don't they make everything big? Like they can't just make everything big. So notifications, usually when your app spins up right away, you want to ask for notifications. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, yes, ask the user, because it's a vital part of the system. Notifications don't work? Okay, fine. They're not going to find out much. And we're going to add in use geofencing. We'll start with the geofencing. That's usually the coolest. Let's bring that out. Now, you'll see that there's a generic sitting here waiting for something to happen. And this is where I start to wire in your delegates. So we're going to actually create a geofence delegate. I'll call it my geofence. I can't even see my own monitor. Okay. And we'll say geofence delegate. Give Visual Studio a second here to figure it out. And we'll merge that interface. And there. So this is the start. Let me just go register it one more time. We'll register that here now. Beautiful. So now, this should look fairly familiar. Now, it's not your .NET events, but it is an interface that says, you know, when the geofence fires, you're going to get a state, and you're going to get a region. Let's see if we can see that. Font's too big. Anyhow, this is the region. It'll be your identifier, and you know the coordinates are firing. I'll show you that in a second. And it's async, which is, again, a bit unique for a background task in the world that we work in. But this will execute. Okay, so we'll do a notification. We always like to spam our users when they're doing something that we think we care about. So let's bring in the notification manager. Okay, and notifications. And we'll basically say, you know what, our message is going to be, if you're crossing the geofence, why is that not taking? New status equals geofence state. Yeah. And we'll do entered, welcome, otherwise goodbye. And we'll make this async because we want to wait for our notifications. So we'll do notifications.send, and we're just going to send, oh, come on. We're just going to send our title, Geofence, and our message. Still not, oh, status, there we go. That's what everyone was saying. I'm only half listening to you. I can't do two things at once. So that's really it. That's really all we have to do to wire up a geofence. So there's one more thing we got to do is actually register one. So I'm going to, for the purpose of the demo, I'm going to show you how we do what's called a headless mode. And by that I mean we don't need to put this in our view models. It's a geofence that's always going to fire. So for anybody that's ever been to Toronto, anybody been to Toronto? Well, you guys live there. It doesn't count. You put your hands down. Everybody knows the CN Tower, I'm assuming? Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I like the CN Tower. I want to know when I'm about, that's pretty huge now. Come on. Yeah, it's coming. Oh, I really angered it now because I copied the whole line. That's what I get for using copy and paste, right? That's what I do. All right. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm saying, what are we doing? I'm not sure what that is. There we go. Go away. Basically what we're doing is we're saying, I care about, every time my app starts, I want to register as a geofence. I don't care, CN Tower is really important to me, I want to know when I get near it. So I'm saying, this is the CN Tower. We have to identify it so we know what to do with it. So if we had multiple geofences that go through that delegate, at least we know what they are. And we give it a position. Magically, I know the position of the CN Tower. Thank God for Google Maps. And last but not least, I know nobody knows meters in here. Does everybody know what a meter is? Yeah. Sorry, I don't have convert to feet in here. So this is about 200 meters, or I think roughly 370 feet. Is that close? Pretty close. So this is going to register that fence, and hopefully, iOS is now nice to me. I'm just going to make sure we connect. I feel like I should be saying something to Steve Jobs right now. Okay, so we're going to spin this guy up. I have a Visual Studio update waiting, but there is no way I'm touching that guy today. All right, so it's asking for a lot of permissions right now. I don't think I got the permissions on. Let's go try that one more time. I spam the system with permission requests, so we'll see one more time. Oh boy. What are you angry about now? Okay, let's just try this one more time. See, I run this 4 times, and then I do the demo, and it's not going to run right. Okay. So we're going to go to a backup plan here. And we'll wait for the app to actually start. Who knew you had to do that? And I'm just going to cheat a little bit here. You didn't see this. This is terrible. Shiny host. Resolve. And we'll resolve our Geofence manager. And we're just going to request permissions. So what I'm having to do here is just because it doesn't like the permission, the emulator gets sometimes a little wonky with me, and of course it does it now. That's the way it works. And we're going to comment out the startup for a second. That's good. So we'll get our permissions out of the way, and then we'll register our Geofence. Yeah, okay. There we go. So we'll get that out of the way. It'll ask for permissions, big deal. And I'll say, give away my life. You can know everything about me. And it's bitten me in the butt today. With no error message. Isn't that a good thing from Visual Studio? I just wish it didn't have to happen during my demo, because I did this like 3 times this morning, and it was just fine. Okay, I'm going to come back to this, because I wanted to show one other thing. I want to show a job, because this is kind of one of the killer features for everybody. So I'm going to, let's call it a notification job. So again, who in the audience was saying they do any sort of periodic jobs? Any syncing? Data syncing? Yeah. That's a big one. So I'm going to bring this out. So jobs, hang on. So jobs basically spins off of 2 things. In the Android world, it will be using Android X Work Manager soon as Xamarin releases that. They said 8.2, right? And 8.2 yesterday, 16.2? I guess we'll see. Right now it's using Job Manager, and it piggybacks on background fetch on iOS. If you're using background fetch in iOS, it's not when you expect it's going to run. So background fetch is, I know some people complain about it, but it's actually quite intelligent in the way it does things. They like to do things like if you don't use your device at night, because you're sleeping, they're not going to run your background jobs because they don't need to, right? So they'll wait for instance, I get on the train at the morning and I'm pretty consistent with my timing. They'll start triggering your background jobs to run, and they'll run fairly often because it knows I'm active. It knows how the network's going to transition, and it'll start running my jobs every roughly 5 to 10 minutes. So if I want to pull data like news feeds or any of that stuff, it'll pull it into your app, and then you can store it in a local SQLite, just basically how all the news apps work. So for this guy, I'm hoping it's actually going to run still, but we'll see. I'm going to put the notifications in here as well. Yeah, I know. I wasn't going to do that. I'm just going to say it does work. We just... and we'll put that on. And we'll simply await jobs. Hi from this job. Okay, so nothing special. I don't even have to await this. Actually, there's one other thing you have to do. So because I piggyback on background fetch, iOS really likes to know, did you do something? Did you download data? Did you not get data? So you actually made a call out to your API. Your API did not return data. They really want you to return true or false. You can lie to them if you want, but they start to throttle you because I'm pretty sure they're watching your network request as well. Who knew, right? So don't lie. Really, if you got data, return true. If you didn't get data, return false. Now, the good news is if this does crash, right, if you don't put a try-catch around this, Shiny does protect it, because if that job crashes for any given reason, iOS won't launch it anymore. And then you have to go back in, go through the process. Please let my job run, etc., and then hope for the best. So again, it's there. It'll return false because obviously you didn't get data because your job crashed. So we're going to actually wire in this guy as well. So this is a job I want to always run. Register job. And we'll do new job info. And we'll give it a name. We have to identify our job. So this was called notification job. We have to say the type of the job. It's a bit repetitive, I know. And I'll explain that why in a minute. And there's a whole bunch of extra things that you can do here for your job. For instance, if network is a requirement for running your job, which it really does have to be for Apple to be happy with what you're doing, you can specify that it's only allowed to run on Wi-Fi. You can specify that it can run on any connection if it thinks it's got internet, etc. You can put filters such as the device has to be charging, battery can't be low, etc., and it'll filter this job out. It won't run it if it doesn't need to run. So we'll go back here. For this one, I don't even know if I have Wi-Fi right now. I hope I do, but. So the basic premise here is that I just want to say, okay, well, the name of this job is notification job. The type is notification job as well. And the reason for duplicating this is because some people do want to run jobs multiple times with different parameters. So with all these jobs, there is a list of parameters you can pass. It's just a dictionary. I'm not going to pass any for this. I'm just showing the premise of what you can do. Come on. Yeah. IntelliSense is not my friend right now. Neither is Visual Studio. I may not even get to the demo before this is over. So anyhow, you can pass parameters to it, and I'll show you how you can use them when they come out of the other side. So we'll go back to our job. So in this job info that's passed into your job, you have a lot of stuff that you can work with. So there's the last time it ran successfully. There is your parameters in the form of how you pass them, which is basically just a dictionary of string and object. And what else do we have in here? There's also the ability if you want it to repeat. Sometimes people just want a job to run once, or sometimes they want that job to run forever. It depends on how bad you want to spam your users' data. You can go from now until the end of time. Also, if you wanted to cancel this job, you could set it to false. It'll save and cancel it after the fact. So we've got that guy registered. And we'll see if this is going to run. If it doesn't run, what are you angry about now? Not really sure what you're angry about now. Apparently nothing. So let's see. If this is going to be a pain in the butt, then I'll take questions and I'll show a couple of the wiring, but we'll see how this goes. Come on. No, now it's really angry. Yeah, I got to see what's going on there. Visual Studio. I copied this code. Okay. Anyhow, I'll show off the last of the wiring. This app is obviously, I'm not going to restart Visual Studio because it's going to take forever. This was working fine earlier. It's the same code, so no big deal. So in order for this to work effectively on iOS, you do have to init it. You have to get it going before any of the stuff like xamarin.forms and stuff. just because Shiny will wire into Prism. Anybody using Prism? Prism's awesome, right? Dan actually did a library that gets Shiny to wire directly into Prism, so you don't have to register your dependencies twice. He's still working on that. So nothing too hard on the iOS side, obviously, because iOS is pretty easy. But if we go to the Android side, Android's got a little bit more weird. On the Android side, you do have to create an application. And the reason for that is the application spins before any of your services, any of your broadcast receivers. And this way that when you start doing your dependency injection, everything is spun and ready for you to go in your delegates. So definitely something that needs to happen. Probably everybody's doing a main activity. If you're using forms, you've got a main activity. You have to do things like your permission checks. I'm assuming everybody here uses James permission plugin, yes? No? Okay. So Shiny piggybacks on that as well. Eventually we're going to have like 10 things here. I think Jonathan Dick also has his barcode library requesting permissions. So just keep adding on to it. Eventually there'll be like 30 lines here. I'm hoping that Xamarin figures out a way to make that swizzle a little bit better. So I'm sorry about the demo. The demo gods did indeed bite me. But I will take questions now if anybody's got any questions. Sure.
So the biggest background issue I have is with push notifications.
Yep.
So if your phone is in the background and I get a push notification saying, Alice sent me a message.
Okay.
When I go to the phone, I'd like to see that message there. But because the phone is in the background, I can't go fetch the message. Do you have anything that can help with that?
I don't have anything that deals with push notifications. It's more about the device hardware. What are you using for your push notifications?
Firebase.
How about on the iOS side?
Same thing.
Okay. There's Randy Delisario. Is that his name? Did I pronounce that right? You should talk to him. He actually has a good plugin for that, I think. He does the Firebase stuff. Hang on, right up here.
So you talked about the inclusion of some of the RX pieces.
Yep.
And specifically when it talks to Bluetooth, what is it about the Bluetooth story that makes RX a good solution to that problem?
So Bluetooth with RX is I didn't touch anything.
That's a shiny job.
I guess. All right. Wow. So Bluetooth is good for RX because you tend to get a lot of rapid movement of data through Bluetooth. So it's really good to have. You can control it, you can throttle it, you can filter it, which those are common things for Bluetooth. Event's not really appropriate because you can't control it. So sometimes you can flood the engine with too many things. For characteristics, it's also good, just because that can also throttle you like heavy. It's just everywhere you work in Bluetooth, RX is appropriate, and the chaining of things that you can do there makes it. I don't know. Some people are doing it with events. Best of luck to you. I'm not changing it. At the back.
Is it okay to request permissions all at once? Like, do the OSs know to like sequence them, or?
Apparently not today.
I wonder if it was a demo thing or if that's like in reality.
I ran the same thing 3 times this morning, and it was all fine. And then, of course,
One by one for each permission?
it's supposed to. It's not doing that today. So.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
So that's what's happening. It didn't like my permissions on geofencing anymore. Any other questions? Yep.
So you've got the ASP.NET, or not ASP.NET, the .NET Core, .NET Core startup stuff in there.
Yep.
Like the iHost startup stuff for that? Like it's like
No. The problem with extensions hosting framework is it tends to bring in everything in the kitchen sink, configuration, I don't know, you name it. It brings in logging, it brings like everything. And really, there's not a direct benefit right now to Xamarin, in my opinion. So I built all the hosting in Shiny out of the box. Only because the hosting framework doesn't offer really anything. You'd still have to do an Android application. You would still have to do your delegates. It doesn't give you anything, in my opinion, right now. Yep.
So iOS background, how about you have to send your full PDF file?
Yes.
Does your
So that's part of the wiring. So the question is how do you set up the background fetch? There's a list of instructions that come out of the README. I didn't want to go through the wiring too much because it's just boilerplate stuff. But you do have to put your info P lists. You configure them for background fetch and all those permissions and stuff. So, sorry, yeah? You can. There is a way to configure that. There is a way to configure that. Right now it's set at the minimum, which is generally pretty good for people. So it'll go roughly, at the minimum on background fetch, it's anywhere between, it's about 5 to 10. If it knows you're an active user in that app, so like a news app, it'll pull more frequently. Again, you just kind of, please let my job run. And it'll decide. It's an arbitrary process on iOS. Anyone else? Okay?
I got a question, one last question back here. So you mentioned that the Prism Dan is working on, and for any framework, is this even working?
I can barely hear you.
Okay.
Just yell at me.
Like that.
Yeah, eat the mic.
So from Shiny's perspective, right? If you're using any framework that is registering dependencies as well, and has a hook into Shiny like Prism does or will, can Shiny access that container or dependencies registered to that container from here, or do we need to move those?
Talk to the guy right beside you. He just did a library on it.
The answer is yes. It just has to return iService provider.
Cool.
Definitely something we can talk about if people have questions. There is an integration plan for MVVM Cross, RxUI to a degree, and obviously Prism. Dan kind of took it away from me. He just was like, I'm going to do it. And he did it. And I was like, okay, well, I was planning on doing it, but since you've already done the work, that's great.
That's actually why I asked the question, because we're looking at when you're doing the entire startup initialization for that.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. I'd love to be a part of that one. All right.
I'm working on it next week.
Oh, great. Anybody else? You going to hit me with one more, Hussein? You're eating the mic.
Anyone had a question about notification? You can talk to me. We went through that recently on handling notifications when the app is killed. So maybe I can help.
Okay. All right, I'll be hanging around for about 5 minutes, and then I have to go to another workshop. Dan, thanks for that scheduling, buddy. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. And are you sure
so
Shiny
thank you.
really works? I'm just kidding. Thank you. Thank you, guys.